live. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come out and chit chat. It's Recovery Month.
Yeah, baby.
September. So we just go from International Overdose Awareness Month on the 31st, where it's kind of this somber, emotional feel, to almost like a celebration. So it's almost like a celebration for individuals that we have lost, and then moves into a celebration of basically hope, right? And in getting the opportunity to know you, over almost the last 2 years now, I think you embody what we're talking about right now, which is Recovery Month, hope, inspiration. People could, take a little bits and pieces of your story, and hopefully, whether it's learn something, integrate something in their life, or just realize like I can change too. Yeah. Right. And so again, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thanks for the work that you're currently doing and you have done in the space, in the industry. Thanks for embodying recovery. And you ready to go? Just have a couple conversation about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just, before we get started, I really appreciate the opportunity here at North Star. So you and I have talked in the past, and I've worked my way through different addiction treatment programs, and so I feel like long gone are the days of the 12-step archaic model, especially for folks that are suffering from opioid use disorder. And I just really think that we're doing big stuff here at North Star. So I appreciate being part of the team.
Well, thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for making that choice. All right, Brian. Obviously a very motivational story, not only for yourself intrinsically, for others that are going to be listening, right?
Yeah.
Born and raised where?
Oh, the mean streets of Cottage Grove, Minnesota.
Okay.
Upper middle class, white, heteronormative, suburban Minnesota. So didn't really have a whole lot of inner city street smarts, if you will. I got a jobs along the way, talking and doing sales gigs, mostly over the phone, and some like in person where you're knocking on doors and trying to make the sale, and so that's what led me into
So always been a salesman.
Always been a salesman.
Were you the classic prototypical lemonade 4, 5, 7-year-old out there at the corner?
Yeah.
That was you.
If you want to keep the cup, it's going to be another penny.
Yeah.
So I've always thought of myself in that realm, and I've always had success in doing that. And I got a job when I was 18, making real good money, and so it was a sales company in the. If you've ever been in sales, and I think most of us know that have been in sales, those places tend to be, especially late 90s, the sales floor was a veritable pharmacy, right? Yeah. Like anything goes.
Competitive stress, as well as what fuels you through that stress. Some parts of it, right?
Right. Full on boiler room situation.
Got it.
So I thrived in it for a while, and I was real young and making a lot more money than I knew what to do with, still living in my parents' basement.
So prior to 18, right? Use, experimenting, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, other substances. Did that come into
so I
play?
think I think, like I said, what comes with that suburban America, I think our house parties and stuff like that, and dabbled a little bit, maybe drink a few beers. Maybe if somebody had a Percocet, okay, it's party time, but never, like all the way hard like it became later in life. But huge pothead, age 14 to age 22, 23, something around there. But never really thought of myself as a hard drug user, and I think a lot of us fall into that. Well, I don't do that. That's for them. I just do this little thing, and I think that's kind of what led me down the path, right? Like, so I have conversations a lot with our clients about I don't really subscribe to the old school Nancy Reagan, just say no, and as far as drugs go, most people think of pot as fairly innocuous, right? But I think that we do fall into that trap. Well, when I'm a little kid, when I'm 5 years old, and I tell myself I want to be a fireman or a policeman, and I'm never going to smoke cigarettes or kiss a girl or, any of that stuff. And then so I smoked a cigarette. Now what's a little bit of pot at this party? Okay, well, I already do a little bit of pot. What's a little blow in the bathroom with these guys? I want to fit in. Well, I already do blow, and, and we just really push that, we're only
push the envelope.
one step removed.
Yep.
So we start out, 10 rungs away, and we work our way up that ladder a little bit at a time.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it wasn't.
And as far as before the sales gig at 18, right? Whether it's school, whether it's sports, athletics, etc. I hate using this term in a bell curve. Normal, right? What is normal today? I understand that, but would you say you fall in the middle? Would you say you fall, different sides of normal, like involved in athletic, involved in sports, involved in extracurricular activities, in GPA grades, etc. All on the spectrum of normal?
So I always had decent grades. I played a little football early in junior high, and I think my first year in high school. Never really followed it. After that, thought smoking pot was much cooler than hanging out after school and working out. But as far as grades and stuff like that went, so I was one of 90% of kids in that era that was diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
So I think, back then it was your kid couldn't possibly be, misbehaving. He must have had an issue, and here's how to medicate that issue. And I learned fairly quickly that if I didn't take my medication for like 3 days, I would have an additional amount that I could take, and it's party time. I could do more homework. I could stay up later. I could.
Came in the terms of medication of Ritalin?
Adderall.
Adderall, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I guess I figured that out early on. And once I made that discovery, I think I kind of pulled out of school a little bit. It was more of how can I finagle this situation to have a good time? And
still graduated on time?
No, so I actually didn't spend a whole lot of time in high school my junior or senior year, and I was given the opportunity to either A, drop out of high school, or B, attend a correctional type of a high school due to my truancy. There was truancy officers, stuff like that. So I opted for the former and said, okay, well, I'm not trying to go to a correctional institute. I'll just be done with high school. I ended up dropping out early on my senior year and got my GED that same month, and said, okay, that's enough of school, and here I go. And that's when I got into my sales career.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So now we're into sales. As far, and I would say that's rather abnormal, right? I mean, as far as abnormal is concerned, from the classic American, graduating school, participating in a couple events, and then off to college, right? And so that was different for you. That was different for you. Do you feel some of that is from your ADHD, like trying to race a little bit to that high with Adderall?
Maybe. I don't know that I fully agree with that diagnosis. Again, I think it was the late 90s. Everybody had ADHD. Kids getting bad grades got ADHD. My kid yelled at me at the dinner table, ADHD. And so I don't know that I fully agree with that, but I do know that I was pretty quick to manipulate that situation in pretty much every situation thereafter until I started my road to recovery.
That makes sense. So again, Adderall, smoking marijuana, moves into sales career. Right. Sales career starts off. Obviously, there's some offerings when you go with this run with this party, run with this group. Yeah. You had made mention earlier about cocaine, etc. Take me from there.
Okay, so I start the sales job. It's going well. I'm fitting in with all the older guys, and
were you the young man on campus?
Yeah, I was 18 when I started there, and I think the average age of the sales floor at that time was probably 30, 35-ish.
Okay.
Older guys that have long burned bridges and lost their families along the way because of just the lifestyle. and I thought it was interesting that didn't come with a, hey, if I could do it over again, it was, yeah, come on, we're going. And so again, off to the races, and so I was smoking a little weed, and then it was, well, we got some blow. I tell you what, you get one more account. I'll take you in the bathroom. We'll do a couple rips. Oh, okay. So that sounds exciting and interesting, and so I do that, and then go do that, and graduated from that. Well, the cocaine does that thing for me that gets me up, similar to my Adderall used to do for me.
Yeah.
But then I saw these guys using some other type of drugs, and I didn't know what it was at the time. Again, 18, not wise, coming from Cottage Grove, Minnesota, not wise to the ways of the world. And so then I ended up using meth with these guys, and then it was, well, what is this magic button that I can press, and all of a sudden I'm talking 300 miles an hour instead of just 30 miles an hour, and I'm
Can get go.
just a maniac.
Yeah.
So the meth became an issue at this company that I worked for, to the point where I became really aggressive. So they pushed aggression a little bit, because that's how you got sales. But I pushed the line a little more than a little bit, and a little more than I would care to go into detail, which resulted in some disciplinary action. And so I had the choice at the age of 22 to either A, you're fired, or B, you can take your show on the road and go work out of the Florida office, because some of those guys down there could use a little bit of that fire.
Did you feel like you were managing inside, like in your own brain?
Oh, yeah.
Did you feel like you were managing your addiction well?
I got this.
Yeah.
Mom comes downstairs. I'm painting the bedroom. It's 3 a.m. It's normal, Mom. Just go to bed. Leave me alone. Yeah. So just again, unwise and oblivious to what people around me were seeing. And no, you don't get. Have you seen my paychecks?
Yeah.
You don't understand. Not realizing that you live in
value of my dollar versus my health.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up in Florida as a young man, 22 years old. And
What part of Florida?
Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
Yeah. So Gulf side, way south.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, it was the height of the pill mills down there, and all the pharmacies and pain clinics down there. I had a landlord that I lived in this place, and she was a old hippie chick from the 70s, and couldn't find pot. And me, naturally, as a big pothead, I found my supplier in pretty short order when I got down there. Yeah.
How long did it take you?
I think I bought an ounce within the first week or so. And then I found out that she was not getting good pot, and said, well, I need to find some pot like that. And so I finagled that situation and told her that it cost this much and not this much, and made a couple extra bucks on that situation, until I found out that she told me that she had cancer, and she had been given these medications, and the medications that she was taking didn't make her feel very good, and she would rather just smoke pot.
Okay.
Perfect. What is it? What do you got? And she told me what she had. It was oxycodone, and so I picked those up. And
so that was your first time?
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Well, outside of the onesie twosies,
with the Percocet,
my mom's Vicodin.
Yeah.
So now I had a large supply.
Okay.
And huge demand.
In going down there, right? So Stretch down there, acquiring your first bag of marijuana, right? Did you bring drugs down with you?
No.
No. So there was a time there where there was quote unquote no use.
Right.
Okay. All right. Had a bit now pill of oxys. Okay.
Yep. Had a few of those, and was moving right into the sales team down there, and I knew they partied like everybody partied up here in Minnesota, because they had come up a few times for top producer trips, stuff like that. And so I knew I could get rid of them pretty easily. I didn't know how lucrative they would be, but I knew I could get rid of them. And it turned out there was just this boom of business down there for any opioids at all.
So when we're educating maybe a group of individuals that are naive to let's call it a bottle of 50 pills, right? And what's the street value on something like that?
So I think at that time, and it has since increased, but I think at that time in Florida it was about 50 cents a milligram.
50 cents a milligram.
Yeah. So if you had 90, 30 milligram oxycodones, you had a pocket full of money.
Got it.
So anyways, I got rid of those in fairly short order, and then word got out that Brian's the guy, and he can, find whatever you need. And so I ended up at a few different social events, parties, stuff like that. And I met my girlfriend at the time, who ended up becoming my wife at the time down in Fort Myers. Yeah. So she was into taking the pills. I knew a little bit, but not to the extent that she knew and her friends knew. So they were really into them, and I said, well, okay, so these things must be awesome because you guys are going bananas for these things. And so then I dabbled a bit, and I said, whoa, I've been getting rid of these things. These are gold. They're taking away my pain. They're taking away physical pain, mental pain, all of that stuff from being removed from family and, everything that goes on with a young man who travels across the country, and just made things good again. And
how was your work performance?
So I would say that my work performance initially was better because it gave me a little bit of energy. It was like this, okay, we're ready to rock and roll, and we're hitting the phones, and we're going. But I think eventually when the withdrawals started to come, when I needed them, it wasn't like I was really getting high anymore. It was more just maintaining and not being ill.
So your focus switched.
Right.
Basically focused to, let's make that money.
Yeah.
Let's
party time.
Party time. Continue.
I got to get out of here quick.
Yep.
Right.
And I got to go.
Yep. So then it went from let me reach for the sky and set the world on fire to just let me hit that minimum quota that I need to hit today so I can get out of here quickly. So then she and I both digressed down there in Florida.
So she was actively using as well.
Actively using as well. We lived together. She and I actually shortly after she moved in, we were pregnant, and pretty expensive to have a child out of wedlock when one of the person doesn't have insurance, and so we ended up doing the shotgun wedding thing. Flew out to Vegas, got married. I think we were out there for a few days, came back, and things had declined pretty rapidly after that. We really got into our use, and we ended up having a miscarriage down there in Florida. I think that at that time that I knew that was, it was heavy for me. This is my fault. I brought this into your life, and this is in your body, and that's probably why this happened. We could have maybe lived happily ever after.
So prior to you, was she using?
Yes.
She was. Okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us, I don't know, I don't know where the blame lies, but it feels pretty heavy internally. So after all that guilt and feeling that way, it was just, I isolated from her a bit, and I ended up continuously using pretty heavily, and I'm calling back home now. So when I leave, I'm making great money. I'm moving to Florida. I'm getting a house with a pool. I got a new car. It's good. And now all of a sudden, calling home and, hey, I need you to float me $1,000 until the weekend or until taxes, or I think a lot of us know the game on
and buried in lies.
Right. So that happened a few times, and I could hear it when I would call home. I could hear it in their voice, the concern and
worry,
discontent, and being the salesman that I am and was, I was, no, you don't understand.
I got it.
So I ended up saying, what, I think with saying it really without saying it, I think I'm gonna come back, and I think I just need a fresh start and to get away from all of this situation down here. And I told myself that I was gonna come back and go to rehab, because Minnesota is the capital of the world for recovery. So I broke the news to this girl. Now this is about 6 or 8 months after we first started talking and got married. We got married in pretty short order after.
So 23 at this time, probably 23, 24?
Yep, something like that.
Okay.
Come back to Minnesota. I'm coming with you. I'm your wife. And a little piece of me was like, this is not a good situation. You're my wife because of how things played out, and you and I both had that conversation, and it's kind of a situational deal, but maybe there's something here. Maybe we could do, you know what, let's go. And so we both came back to Minnesota. Never went to treatment, just sidestepped the whole work gig, which was failing at this time.
So left everything behind down to Florida.
Yep.
Just picked up, hopped in the vehicle that you had at the time.
Got a U-Haul and grabbed my clothes, and we were out.
Got it. Now tell me, you'd said, just a little bit ago, they said, use was getting heavy, right? What does that look like heavy for you?
So the thing that I think scared me the most was it started out, real small. Like a 30 milligram pill would last me at least half the day. And then towards the end, it was like, well, I needed 10. I needed one at least every hour. And there was a time where I woke up and I had felt like somebody had hit me in the face with like a baseball bat or something when I was sleeping. Like, did somebody come in here and try to rob our house, or what happened to me?
Yeah.
And I went to walk, and it was slow, and my heart was pounding, and I later had come to the realization that I had probably overdosed in my sleep. Never went to the hospital, never any of that, just maybe it was real light and I just came out of it, but I remember it was the worst feeling ever. And it wasn't withdrawals because I had just used. It was that.
Yeah.
So that's what scared me the most.
Was that the only time that you think you overdosed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's, I think, what drove me to come back to Minnesota. So we get back to Minnesota. I get a job for another company. They're starting up a sales program.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt, but did you know the magnitude of life and death at this point?
No. It's all a party.
It's all a party. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just got to get away from it, and if I'm just good for like a month, I'll be back to normality again. Not really seeing the gravity of everything.
So when you look at the obituaries that we see in International Overdose Awareness Day, like I said, was 2 days ago, and you see the names and you see the ages, 18, 19, 22, 25. Typically, it's usually 30 and under for the most part.
Yeah.
Can you see how, going back to your 22, 23, 24-year-old self, that you could get lost in that?
Yeah.
And that you could be, dead upon every potential use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, at the time I thought it was just it was a party, or I'll pull out of it, or man, that was close. Next time I'll only do this much, not really realizing like, man, that could have been it for me forever.
Yeah.
And I think that it's tough to see that when we're in it.
Have you used IV by this point?
No.
No, you've not. Okay.
No. So at this point, prior to this, I was just taking them.
Snorting, smoke. Or ingestion.
The wife had introduced me to, well, you can just put them in your nose like it's cocaine. And, so that's where I was at this point. So we're back in Minnesota. We're back here for a couple days, and I realized the price of oxys in Minnesota was double the price that it was in Florida that were as readily available. So I ran into an old high school friend on purpose and found out that that he could get whatever I need, right? Like he was the me in Florida to Minnesota. So I ended up purchasing a bunch from him for $1 a milligram. They were gone fairly quickly. Pawned the few things that I brought back to get the money because I hadn't gotten my first paycheck from this new job yet. And got some more. And he said, well, why would you spend all the money on these when this is much stronger and it's way cheaper? I said, what is that? And he said, well, it's heroin. And immediately, no, that's that's
I'm not
something
going
that's-
there.
That's dirty. I'm not, I mean, like, that's our thought about it. But when he explained it, no, you can snort it just like you snort the pills. You don't have to use needles. It's not the 70s. You're not, rolling around on the sidewalk with a needle hanging out of your arm or sitting on a toilet in some public, the stereotypical thought that entered my head when I heard that was absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And he normalized it for me a bit. Not that I needed much.
Normalization at that
Right,
point.
yeah. So then that was the new gig, but he didn't get that himself. He had some people that he would get that from. Like, I'd have to go to his neighborhood, pick him up, go cop, and then he would break off himself a little bit for the trouble.
For sure.
And then we would go about our day, and then we'll see you same time, same channel tomorrow. So that went on for a little while, and then I saw one of the people that he went to get it from using needles, and I was, well, what's that about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this way you get it 100%. It's not the 20% intranasally, and I looked it all up, and I did the math, and I was, I thought in my head, man, I'm smart. I'm getting this dialed in. So anyways, we started using needles at this point. And after that, things really, really fell apart.
Marriage is damn near over.
No, marriage
Okay.
is good. Things as good as to be expected amidst an opioid dynamic. But things with work started really falling apart. I got caught swindling some money out of some customers. Ended up leaving that job and ended up moving. So now I'm back in Cottage Grove. When we first came back in, I lived in a apartment in Burnsville, or a townhouse in Burnsville, with my former wife. And now I'm back in Cottage Grove. We're living in the basement. I got my truck parked out in the driveway. Truck's repoed out of the parents' driveway while I'm in the basement. It's 90 degrees
Like
out. I got a long sleeve shirt on.
the real deal. The tow truck comes up,
Yeah.
pulls out, grabs it.
Like-
You're sitting out there watching your truck go.
Worst case scenario for my parents. Oh my God, the neighbors are seeing this. It's it's just not a normal thing in that neighborhood to be a drug addict, right?
Mhm. Yeah, what emotion was going through your head at that time, and what emotion was going through your parents? Was your parents of embarrassment, and what was yours?
So I think my parents were petrified. Didn't
Okay.
know what to do, what was really going on. They just knew this crock that I was feeding them day in and day out. And I don't think for me, it didn't really hit for me until I had a conversation a little while later with my mom. And so truck's repoed. I'm pawning things. Things are going missing around the house. Cabs are coming to pick me up, and it's become quite evident that their son that ran off to Florida to set the world on fire is doing the opposite of that in the basement now with a sidekick who's got the same problem.
And they suspect use. They suspect all the above at this point, correct?
Yeah,
or
so I
not
think,
there yet.
Well, no, I think that they suspect it, but I mean, when it's somebody that you love and care about like that, it's I hate to say the manipulation because there's shame associated with that, but I think I manipulated them, and it was
So
easy
your
to me.
ultimate sales pitch was basically your parents at this point.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's easy because that's what they want to hear. Oh, it's all good. Okay, we don't have anything to worry about. For a minute there, I thought the sky was falling, but it's good. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think that all came to a head when I had a conversation with my mom. There was so my dad has always made real good money, lavished her with all kinds of jewelry and baubles throughout the years, and so much so that she probably doesn't remember what she's got.
Mhm.
And so I'd go up into her jewelry cabinet and pull out some old piece of junk, or so I thought, and pawn that.
Bring it to the shop.
I'll get it back. No worries, I'll get it back. So there was one day in particular, I grabbed this old, the oldest, most beat up, junkiest thing I could find in there that nobody would miss, and I took it down to the Cash for Gold place and had it melted. because that was the only place that was in Cottage Grove. They didn't have a pawn shop, and I didn't have a ride to get to the pawn shop. So it turns out that the reason it was the oldest, dirtiest thing is because it had been passed down from generation to generation. And at that point, I mean, I think, so I never really served jail time or anything like that, but all of those things are small compared to the look in my mom's eyes that day. And I think that was probably what did it for me. Like threatened me with jail time, threatened me with death, threatened me with all of that. But if the one person that I really truly care about in this world looks at me like that again, I don't know. I think I'd probably burst into flames.
Yeah.
So I made a call to Valhalla Clinic, and this is way back when they had just opened. It was just one. It's a local methadone clinic. And did my admission there, and I ran into a great counselor. And about three weeks in or so, my wife at the time, she still wanted to dabble around, and hey, let's go.
She wanted to still use.
Yeah, right.
So she did not go to the methadone clinic to.
She did.
She did.
She
okay.
did. Yeah.
So you're both committed to let's change at this point.
Right.
Okay.
But at this time, it's really more about me, and this is what I'm doing, and you're coming along with. She wasn't really ready to be sober, I don't believe, and anyway, we ended up using, I think, one more time after that, and shortly thereafter, she said that's enough of this sobriety stuff for me. I came home one day after going to my appointment, and my dad said, yep, she wanted to go, and I was not going to stand in her way at this point, because holy smokes, you got to figure out something. And so from there, I had a conversation with my counselor, and he said, well, why don't you start thinking about getting into this field or getting us into the becoming a counselor? And I said, no, I don't do that nerd stuff. I'm a salesman.
Yeah.
And he said to me, what bigger sale than to say a few words to somebody and have them change their whole life. And that really resonated with me. And then so I started at it. There's a program through the state of Minnesota that's called the Vocational Rehabilitation. It's through the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And their budget grew real big under Dayton way back when, to include addiction as a disability. And so if you're checking that box, you're qualifying for services. And so they really helped me along the way, and I ended up going.
Tuition reimbursement, stuff like that? Or in what regard? Like what was the resource that they provided?
So I went in and I did an aptitude test, and they said, okay, well, it looks like you'd be really good at flipping burgers, and we got a spot for you right now, or we think that your strengths also would lie in being a counselor. And I said, well, I choose option B. And they said, well, you're not qualified for option B. And I said, well, man, I said, don't worry about it. It's our job to get you to work. And so that's what we're going to do, is get you qualified for option B. So what that looked like was they paid for college.
Wow.
So $50,000. My car broke down. They gave me $1,000 to fix the transmission. They were talking about putting me up in a spot to stay if I needed it. It's a great program. Anybody who doesn't know about it should.
Are those resources still available today?
Yes.
They are.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I always say there's two different types of people in this world, those that know about their resources and those that don't. And then there's also the second side of that coin, those that take advantage of them, those that don't.
Sure.
Right? So educating individuals on these resources are very, very important, because there's a lot of individuals don't even know they're out there.
Right.
That's with most things, right? Whether it's financial assistance, whether it's housing, whether it's, you name it. We have a homeless population right now in our cities and our country, for that matter, that's just skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a lot of individuals that don't even know there's help,
right,
that there's help available for them. So,
well, and there's so much shame involved with it.
Absolutely.
If I say that I need help, does that mean that I'm less than? Or if I know that my son needs help, am I admitting that he has a problem? And what does
Correct.
that mean for me and my social circle? And I think there's just so much stigma associated with it that we don't talk about it. Everybody's just heads in the sand, and I think we'd be all much better off if we just had that open, honest conversation.
Yeah, open dialogue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so off to school.
So yeah, off to school. Turns out that school is great when you've got a target to hit and something that you're ambitious towards. This whole time I'm on the methadone maintenance program.
Okay.
So I'm going in, I'm dosing daily, I'm coming home, I'm studying, and I'm just one track. This is it. I got to pull myself out of this.
I'm going to hit you in the mouth with it right now. We hear about it all the time, right? It's flipping a drug for a drug.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Switching heroin to methadone. And
Yeah.
what's your take on that?
So I think harm reduction is, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I think harm reduction is probably the most successful. I don't want to say the only way, because I know that there's some folks that have white-knuckled it out there and been fairly successful. But so I'll tell you a story. So when I was first starting in my recovery, meetings, you got to get to meetings, you got to develop a sober support network, and you got to get out there and be around like-minded people, because chances are you're going to fall. And if nobody's there to help you up, you're headed right back where you came from, or worse. So I went to a meeting, and while I was at this meeting, and again, this was 2010, so I think the stigma around it is changing a bit. But when I went to this meeting, everybody went around and they talked about their sober time, and I told them, I had 6 months at this point. They said, "Wow, congratulations! How did you do it?" And I said, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the methadone." And I said, "I thought you said you've been sober for 6 months," and that really turned me off to meetings, and I think that's probably been the consensus up until recently from traditional 12-step purists or traditional like AA programs. Not all, but that was.
Did you find that in NA, or was there HA meetings at that time, or not really?
There may have been there, but there were few and
far between.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was my. That was my first.
That was your experience,
right? So to speak to the stigma, replacing one thing for another, I think a lot of folks think that. And again, I think those are a result of not having those open dialogues, those open conversations about stuff. I've made my decision about this. That's what kind of person you are, and there's nothing else to say about it.
During the process of transitioning from opiates, heroin to methadone. Did you detox, or was there a moment of no use whatsoever? Or were you able to go from opiates, heroin, whatever you could get your hands on, I assume at that point, right?
Yeah.
Naturally to methadone. Was there a span of, this is a horrific experience in this detox moment? Did you have that professional help? Did you do it yourself? Were you locked in a room? What did you do to get through that span? Because what we hear in this space over and over again is, I would rather die than go through those moments of quitting that to either Suboxone, methadone, or quite frankly, getting through the withdrawal of abstinence, into abstinence, right? What did you do?
So I think over the years, there's always where your guy is out, or you don't have money and you can't put it together. Over the years, I've been through withdrawal quite a bit.
So you knew what you were getting into.
I knew what I was getting into, but I think that for me, it was 2 days prior I had used pretty heavily. Last hurrah. I think a lot of folks subscribe to that school of thought, even don't really think about the danger of that last hurrah. Luckily, I got into the program and was dosed fairly early on. They start you off at a pretty low dose, so it takes a little bit of the edge off, but it's not, it's no walk in the park. It's not, I'm good again.
So to the loved one or parents, relatives, cousins, brothers, etc., that they've went through the intervention, right? There's a Brian in front of them that's saying, like, I'm ready, willing, and able for treatment. I'm ready, willing, and able for help, right? Last hurrah moment, right? Taken to my drug dealer, drugs coming here, Mom, Dad, just one last time, and then I'll go. What can we do to make that safe, right? There's fentanyl, overdoses. Our overdose rate's going to be well over 70,000 individuals that will die this year, right?
I don't think that there is something that we can do to make that safe. I think that as parents, or I know if somebody had told me, okay, I'm going to do everything that you hope for me and have a great future starting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But today, I need you to help me out, Mom. Mom feels, okay, it's one last time.
That's what I'm saying. The pressure's coming, right?
Be ill. You're doing the right thing tomorrow. And, you know, okay, so we're going to take you over here. We're going to drop you off. We're not going to be part of that situation. I don't think that there is a safe way to do it. Bottom line is we're all going to go through those withdrawal issues. Let's get it out of the way sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not roll the dice on the fentanyl, the carfentanil.
Yeah. And I guess where my mind goes is that's the story that probably happens 80 to 90% of the time.
Yeah.
You know, that certainly that I've heard, and I'm sure you have, and quite frankly, your experience, right? Would Narcan, right? So if I'm a mom, brother, sister, relative, like I said, and I would have Narcan available, and this would be the last hurrah. Is that at least a way to save a life? In the event that someone's going there at that moment.
Yeah, I think it would be advantageous for everybody if you have somebody in your family that's using looking to get on the right path. Or even not looking to get on the right path. It's probably not a bad idea to
have in their house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I think it's just super important for those listeners that are dealing with these same situations that their last hurrah, their last moment, and there's been at least 5 different times where that individual's not shown up to treatment,
right?
Because they're no longer with us, right? And so I think if we can save some lives at that moment, I think it's super important. So continue on. I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that there's so many relationship dynamics there with mom. Like maybe we haven't felt connected for so long, or with dad or big brother or whoever's driving.
Yeah.
We haven't felt so connected in so long. I'm so happy that you're going to do this. Okay, I'll do you this one favor, and now I'm back in there, and it's me and you, and we're headed down the right path. Maybe not doing the right thing in this moment.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I finish school. I end up working at a methadone clinic, and because it was true to my heart, and I know that this works for me, and I just want to scream it from the rooftops that this is the way to go. We developed a men's group over there, which was awesome. Prior to that, it had been, methadone maintenance programs are great, but not a lot of them offer much in the way of programming. So I was excited to bring that to the table and have people engage on a different level than just, all right, see you at the clinic again tomorrow, and we're gonna chop it up in the lobby. It was an actual therapeutic situation, so I was really proud of that. Decided that I wanted to get into the residential game. Worked for a residential program in Matamidi, Minnesota, which is really just a fancy way of saying Maplewood, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And worked there for some time, about a year and a half or so. And then I remembered that you and I met at the March conference in person, but prior to that, I had a conversation with you about one of my guys who was in the Alliance Clinic. And again, we're talking stigma, we're talking folks with mental health, and not a lot of people were taking guys who were on methadone at the time. Certainly not folks that had any kind of mental issues as far as like internal stimuli and things of that nature. And you and I had a conversation, and it wasn't, why don't you try the next door down? It was, let's go. We're going to do this. And I think at that moment I knew that I would work with North Star in some capacity or another. And a couple years later, here we are, director of men's residential.
Oh, that's exciting, man. It's a good story. When you were studying and you had to get through school, right? You had talked earlier about ADHD, not Ritalin, Adderall, right?
Yeah.
Did you find that same issue? Like, studying for classes, reading your books, did you need to think about going back to, like an Adderall substance or something along those lines, or now being clear and having your mind clear? Were you able to, just dive in and get it done?
Yeah, I think later on it was a question of motivation. Was I motivated to be here? Did I need to be under the influence of a stimulant to pay attention. And the answer is in school later on. If I had the motivation to do it, it was not an issue.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Helping people today, right? Helping people today looks very, very different, in the other side of the seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of individuals that operate in this space that ultimately, I got to be careful with how I say this, but try to push down their recovery down the throats of other individuals,
Sure.
right? It's almost like ego gets in the way of other individuals' success or lack thereof.
This is what worked for me. This is the only way to...
Bingo. How do you check yourself every day in the space that we operate that it's not about you, but it's about the individuals we serve? No doubt. It's still, your recovery journey is your recovery journey. And part of that recovery journey is coming to work every day, whether you're an individual painting a wall or an individual leading a clinician group, right?
Yeah.
That's your recovery journey. And I'm happy that this is the path that you're going. But most importantly, how are you able to, let's call it, remove yourself from somebody else's recovery journey and it's theirs? How are you able to do that? Because what I've seen in this field and what I've seen in this space is that can be difficult for some folks.
Yeah. So somebody, along the way, somebody told me, or somebody said, there's many roads or paths to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
My path looked like this. Your path might look like that. And that really stuck with me. And also, so to talk about that motivation piece, so we just got done talking about the school thing. It was initially for me as a young man, it was I don't want to do this, and I'm forced to by familial pressures or society, and so it didn't really take. But later on in life, when I decided that I wanted to do this for me, and did it the way that was comfortable for me, it took. And I think I put those two things together and just know that that's not going to be the same fit for client A as it is for client B or myself.
No, that makes sense. There's a lot of individuals that don't, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm going to, that don't win their first time around. Oh, yeah. Right? Like you look at yourself, right? And you said I had one slip up. I had one slip up. I continued on the journey, and here I am today, right? There's a lot of individuals that go through this process and go through their line of sobriety or recovery, and that wall is, their back is always up against that, and they're falling down, and their back's back up against that wall again and again and again. How do you, whether it's operating in this space or sending messages of hope and inspiration to that individual, that 5th time, man, you got this. 16th time, you got this. 25th time, we got this. Right. How do you do that?
So I think that's why I love the harm reduction model so much, is because it's not about perfection. It's not about black and white. It's progress. We got a little further this time, and then we zigged where we should have zagged. Next time I'll be ready for it. And I had a conversation with a client fairly recently who had been in treatment quite a few times, and I think we all know the numbers for treatment are not, nobody's setting the world on fire. I think the success rates are something like 10-11%.
Yeah, it's low when it comes to opioid use disorder, that's for sure.
Yeah. So me and this gentleman were talking. He said, "Man, I've been to treatment 16 times," and I said, "Okay, so 10 or 11% chance of success. That means that this time you have 160% chance of figuring this out, and we're going to figure it out together." And we did.
Good.
Yeah.
No, that's exciting. In today's version of Brian and his role, what inspires you not only in your recovery, but in what you get the opportunity to do every day?
So the thing that inspires me is that aha moment, having that conversation with somebody, not out of a book, or this is what I read in theory or any of that, but just having that light bulb go on and, okay, I get it, or explaining it in terms that are understandable and not uber clinical.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And yourself.
And myself.
Yeah. No, yourself today. What inspires you today?
Oh.
What moves you?
I think knowing that could have been it. That could have been a wrap that day way back when in Fort Myers. That I could have not come back out of that. And everything after that is just icing.
Yeah, like almost like living life on borrowed time.
Yeah.
Good for you. Today now, what does life look like for Brian?
Great. I get to come here and hang out. We do this podcast. I have a family of normies, or as normal as normies can be. Who gets to decide that, anyways?
Yeah, true.
It's awesome. I run the 2 men's treatment programs. We get out, we have fun in the communities, we laugh every day, and we face struggles every day and overcome them.
Yeah.
And things are good. I mean, it's not, nobody's living on the top floor of the Sears Tower or anything like that, but, we talk about success a lot in our recovery and how we measure success. And is it the 2.5 children and the new car in the driveway and the white picket fence, or is it just happiness and contentness? And can I just be real, and are we all in this together and moving forward? And I've never been happier.
No, that's good, man. Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Recovery Month, right? Recovery Month is a big deal in this space, and I hope someday, just quite frankly, in our world, right? For the individuals that work in the recovery industry, the treatment industry, they know this month well, and they different activities, events, etc., to try to highlight and bring awareness to this space and recovery as a whole. What does this month mean to you?
So I think it's about celebrating recovery. So we talked a little bit earlier about the stigma wrapped around it, and do I really want to tell people that I'm in recovery? And I think this month is about celebrating that. Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that detracts from me. That's what adds to who I am and who we all are in this realm. And I think this month is about celebrating that and owning it and turning it into something good, because it really is.
Yeah. With that, do you have fear that this life could change for you? Do you have fear that this life could change? Whether it's decisions, choices, etc. for yourself, right? In other words, do you feel like you could go backwards?
So I met with everything's good. I'm going to school. I'm thinking about purchasing a vehicle, and I sat down with a car salesman, and he said, I had 23 years of sobriety up until about 3 months ago, when he and I were talking, and that's humbling and sobering, because that's a reality. It's not something that it's just, okay, well, 10 years ago I got it. I'm good.
Yep.
Got it. It's something that we have to do every day. So do I worry about it? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Day in and day out. And I think that's what keeps me sharp, what keeps us all sharp in this
And what are you doing to ensure that you continue on the right track?
Well, luckily for me and for anybody who works in the recovery industry or the human services, is we're eating, living, breathing recovery all day long, every day.
Yeah.
No better meeting than to sit down and run a group and chat with some guys and get some perspective.
Yeah. What's that? Perspective always drives your performance.
Yeah.
Right? When you talk about that moment down in Florida, and that feeling, like you said, in your head, and what you're dealing with, your heart racing, your chest, and just realizing you probably just managed to live through your first overdose, and your only overdose, but yeah, I can see how that perspective definitely continues to drive your performance. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, in wrapping up today, Brian, number one, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there that's, I guarantee it, there's thousands, probably damn near 100,000. There's somebody out there that's in your shoes, that was in your shoes, that probably you started saying, smoking a little pot, started, Adderall, smoking a little bit of pot, doing a little bit of cocaine, moved into a job, moved into a role, got transitioned onto, oxys. Oxys were, overpriced, had to move into heroin. That story is plentiful in our country. Sometimes it's expedited to the end faster, quicker, due to 80% of all individuals that move on to heroin, come from a prescription drug, right? In that moment that you're using and you're shooting up heroin for the first time, there's going to that place, but there's also not. And there's somebody listening today that I hope that there's a message that you can say that either A, hits for them then, or B, if they do go there and they are using, that there could be a message of help is out there, and what can we do, right? So I want you to talk about first, the first answer, right, is I'm ready to go, right? I'm ready to go. I'm ready to shoot up. This is what I'm about to do. And on the right side is I'm already there. What's next, right? What would you recommend for both sides?
I think either way, so we talked a lot about stigma today, and there's a lot associated with that. And I'll just tell a little bit of a story. So my dad, super old school guy, rub some dirt in it, bud. Take the milk, replace the milk. It didn't fully understand it at the time, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to bridge that gap to have that conversation because of the shame involved with that, because I'll take it on the chin. But the end of that story is never I'll just take it on the chin and figure it out. The end of the story is that everybody's going to band together and we're going to go through this together. So the sooner we can get to that, the better. And not being afraid of having those conversations. So I have a lot of stories about my dad. So one of the other things is, he's getting up there in years and he's got some bronchial issues. Walking up the stairs the other day, I heard him wheezing a little bit. And hey, Dad, we got to get to the doc. No, if I go to the doctor, they're going to tell me something wrong.
It's wrong.
Right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it already is. So there's no going to the doctor and there's going to be some moment where the doctor says, if you didn't come in here, you would have been good. But since you did, so whatever it is, it already is. And if we have that conversation now as opposed to 6 months from now after a loss of whatever status, job, life, now's the time to have that conversation.
And have an open, honest dialogue with family, friends, relatives, whoever's willing to, be there to support for the change.
Yep, and that's not easy to do because not a lot of folks, much like my dad, understand it, right? Like super old school Nancy Reagan, just stop. Yep. Just stop. Why can't you just stop? Just don't fully understand it. And for those folks, there are resources, Al-Anon. We offer the family counseling piece if folks want to come in and have a group session. That's something that could be really powerful for changing that perspective and eliminating the stigma.
Well, what do you think about our country and how we criminalize drug abuse? And so here's an example. The amount of times that I've been in local county courtrooms, right? And I've heard this: fifth degree possession, right? Yeah. I know that we're not Portugal, right? And just decriminalize everything. But what's your vantage? What's your view? There's not a whole lot of individuals that we get the opportunity to serve, and quite frankly, the privilege to serve, that aren't on paper, one way or another, right? And paper being probation or having to report to somebody your continued progress and whatnot. What's your vantage? What's your viewpoint of, corrections in treatment and corrections for change?
I think anymore probation involvement, parole involvement is very supportive. I think that there was a time where it was, my PO better never find out about this, but as of late past 5 years, it's been more, I'm going to call my PO and tell them what's going on. And a lot of the referrals that we get are from probation agencies and corrections agencies. So it's not, okay, well, you're locked up and we're going to throw away the key because you're a dirty junkie. It's, hey, we need some help. Here's some help.
Mm-hmm. So you're seeing corrections having a wave of change.
Absolutely.
In regards to this stigmatization or destigmatization rather of fifth degree charges, possessions, etc.
Yeah.
That's good. No, that's good to see. Hopefully we can, as a country, can continue to do that and make change. Is there anything that you'd like to end on, or is there anything that you want to have a message out or send out to, whether it's folks that are struggling, folks that are doing well, Recovery Month, International Overdose Awareness. We're really in a special time. So if there's anything you want to end on, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, so I just want to encourage everybody to, so shame is something that's really hard to overcome, but it's something that we're going to face either today or in 10 months or 10 years. It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to pay the piper with that. But to just have that conversation with the people that are around us, whether that's me having a conversation with my mom at the time, or my mom having the conversation with the neighbors at the time, and really banding together as a culture and not staying in that, because I think that would limit or at least shorten a lot of the windows of use.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe after a couple years somebody said that's enough and we're reaching out to the neighbors and we're getting help, and yeah, everybody knows about it, and maybe it is a little embarrassing, but my kid's not going to die.
Correct.
I think that's probably the message that I would like to relay. There's a lot of help out here, and it's not, I think most folks would be surprised, hey, I'm having some trouble with my husband, my little brother, my uncle, my nephew. The thing that we're afraid of, somebody saying, oh, I'd keep that person away from, that's never coming. It's always, how can we help?
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate you sharing your story. And like I said, I hope there's somebody listening today that picks up the phone and says, I'm struggling. I need some help. And that's our job, to hopefully be able to help support them. So congratulations on your recovery.
Thanks,
It's just the start of the rest of your life, man. You're going to continue on this journey for a long time. So thanks again. You take care of yourself. You continue to do awesome things.
All right, will do.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, brother.